Hey everyone, Pastor Tim here, and I have some new friends on screen with me today who are some very, very important people. And I'm excited for you to meet them and to hear some of their stories. These are some of our frontline workers, and these are the people who day in and day out are working to protect people. They're working to save people's lives, and they're the ones who, in the midst of this pandemic, are rolling up their sleeves and they're getting the job done. And I thought it would be good just to hear from some of them today. Our pastoral care guy, Alan, actually works full-time over at Banner Thunderbird. Alan, why don't you join us first? We'll get you on because this was sort of your idea. Alan, tell us, our folks, a little bit what you do. I think they know that you do pastoral care for us, but what are some of the things that you're doing over at the hospital?
Mainly my responsibilities now is coordinating video chats with families to people who are dying and connecting with the families and making sure there's a representation with the person that's dying, whether, it's a video chat or we try and get somebody in. I work now full-time with the palliative care team, and that's about it. And what else do I do, Becky?
All of these people, by the way, most of them, I shouldn't say all of them, most of them work with you in some way, shape, or form at the hospital.
Most of them, I'd like to say, are friends. So, and that's why I feel a little bit overwhelmed that you guys are here to support this, because I appreciate you and I know that your time's valuable and I know just how stressed you guys can be as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Alan.
I think the hardest thing I'll go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll come back to you. All right, is that all right? Okay. Hey, Vicki, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Vicki Sane. I'm one of the trauma surgeons and ICU intensivists at Banner Thunderbird.
And how long have you been doing that work?
I started at Thunderbird 2 years ago.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Becky, how about you?
I'm a palliative care social worker. I work with Alan, and we work with patients who have serious illness and try to talk about their goals of care or treat symptoms and talk with families and do a bit of all that while they're in the hospital.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being with us today. Lisa, Dr. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Simon. I'm one of the hospitalists at Banner Thunderbird. So basically, I'm like a primary care physician when you're at the hospital. I've been there for almost 5 years.
Wow. Thank you. Thanks so much for being with us. And Liz, some of you may recognize Liz. She goes to Community of Grace. And Tina, her wife, is on our board. Liz, tell us a little bit about what you're doing these days.
So my name is Liz Cruz. I'm a gastroenterologist, and I have my own practice, and mainly outpatient for the most part. But we did remain active, during COVID, taking care of our patients with urgent issues like bleeding and things like that. And so that's we've definitely continued trying to do our part on the outpatient side. So greatly appreciative those of you that are on the inpatient sides. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks for being with us. Clarissa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Clarissa Ellison, and I'm an occupational therapist. So I just help people restore their mobility, their strength, as well as their functional abilities.
Okay, good. Thank you. And we've got Jason and Laura, and they're also part of the Grace family. And Jason and Laura, why don't you tell us what you do, and then Jason can tell us what he does.
I'm a critical care nurse at St. Joe's downtown. Sorry, we got a dog playing over there. And my unit is not the designated COVID unit, but our staff has kind of become big ICU staff between all of them.
I am a captain paramedic with the Phoenix Fire Department. I've been with the fire department for just over 14 years.
All right. Now you two are cutting up on us. Not as in funny. Now you look great. So I don't know what you just did, but maybe it's because the dog ran away. So, all right, good. Well, so Jason does something and Laura does something. That's the takeaway that I got. Laura's a nurse and Jason works for the fire department for Phoenix. Is that right? Yep. Okay. Close enough. All right. And Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I've been at Thunderbird for 16 years, and I'm the medical director for the lab. And our job is to get the specimens prioritized and sent to some requests for testing for COVID. So that's my role.
Okay. Good. Wow. All right. Well, it's so good to have all of you here. And I told these great people here that I had really two big questions, and they can respond any way that they want to. And the first question that I'd like us to chat about today is to talk about what's going on there in the front lines for you, and what do you want people to know about the patients that you're seeing, the work that you're doing, what's happening, both inpatient, outpatient, what's going on, what do people need to know about life for you on the front lines of COVID-19? And I'm not sure who wants to go first. Personally, I find that it's always the hardest to go first, so we'll just go right to the second person. Who'd like to be second and answer the question? All right. Do I need to choose somebody? All right. I'm going to start with Vicki.
Oh, goodness. Okay. We'll say I'm second. Things are really different. My job is generally dealing with people that have acute surgical diseases or people that have had really unfortunate instances happen to them, whether it be car accidents or, heaven forbid, shootings or stabbings. So the main thing that I tend to deal with is either kind of personal sickness or people that have had things done to them by others. The difference with COVID is huge. Number one, I'm very worried for the safety of my team. So the community spread has been so great that we have patients coming in, as traumas that are COVID positive, and having to do kind of high risk procedures on those patients kind of jeopardizes the entire team. And while we still do them, it's kind of always something that's on the back of our minds of number one, do we have all the resources in place? Does everybody have their PPE on? Just in case this is something that, while we're trying to save a person's life, could potentially take out our entire team, which is something that's completely different to think about.
Can you tell us, when we talk about people wearing PPE, what it is you're wearing and what that has done in turn, and maybe you always wear it in the work you're doing, but what has that done in terms of how you do your work?
Yeah, it is a little bit different. We typically in the trauma room would wear some sort of gown just to make sure that we try to keep ourselves from getting blood on each other. And we typically would wear some sort of face protection if we have time to put it on. And that's usually just a shield. Now it's an N95 mask that I'm sure everybody on this chat has worn, but maybe not everybody at home. They're pretty uncomfortable. And I think I have to give, most of the props to our nurses, because they're wearing them day in and day out and have pressure sores on their noses. And those things are hard to work in, hard to breathe in. And it's just something that they do to keep themselves and their families safe. So every time someone comes in, we're gowning up, getting our masks on, getting our face shields on, and just hoping we have time, because in all honesty, if someone comes in and we don't have time to get it on, we're not going to stop and let them die just because we're trying to protect ourselves. We will generally just keep going with whatever we happen to have. So it's interesting because, the danger is real and it's kind of all over the place. And as much as we try to protect ourselves, our job is still to treat others.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Lisa, talk to us a little bit about what you're experiencing these days.
So I'm on the floors working in the hospital. So I just finished 8 days straight of working one of our respiratory care units, which is our COVID unit. I've seen two things. I've seen a lot of tragedy, but I've seen a lot of just resilience of our staff. My nurses are awesome. I know Vicki will agree that the nurses are amazing. She talks about, their faces, their pressure sores. They're amazing human beings, but I've also seen them rally. One of my groups did a "We Will Rock You" song before they went and they taped it and put it on Facebook, and it was awesome. And it was just, showing them that we're stronger than COVID and we can get through this. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've seen. On the sadder note, after doing 8 days of the respiratory care unit, I think I had a hospice conversation or some sort of palliative care conversation at least once or twice a day with some patients. And it's difficult. And I know that our palliative care team, Becky and Alan, have done amazing jobs helping families see patients. I did get one son in to see his dad probably about 24 hours before he ended up passing. And it was hard. I actually ran into him in the room, and it was hard to see him face to face, because it's really easy right now to be a provider. We talk to these people on the phone. You can be a little bit more emotionally detached than when we see them in person, but it's really hard to have these conversations with this family member you've never met, saying, "Hey, your mom or dad's doing really, really bad. I don't think this is going to end well. I think we should try and make them comfortable." So I've seen some tragedy. I've seen patients leave the hospital. We have COVID graduates every single day. I think we've had over 750 at Thunderbird, I think was the most recent number as of yesterday, which was the 25th of July. So if you guys are watching this later, there's probably gonna be more. So we've seen good things, we've seen bad things, but it's wearing all the PPE all day. Us physicians, sometimes I think it less of it than other people, as Vicki said, but the nurses they're absolutely amazing. I'm so proud of our nursing team right now.
Thank you. So Becky, talk a little bit about what you're doing these days and life for you.
The hardest part in all of this is talking with the families who cannot see their loved ones that are in the hospital. And they really do not understand the suffering that they may be feeling or going through. They know how they feel, but they aren't seeing the patient and what's going on with the patient. And our role has been to try to help these families, first of all, maybe see their patient, which is, Alan has been remarkable about doing these FaceTime with families and the patients. And then talking to the families about that we don't think their loved one is going to survive this. And let's do some comfort care. They don't understand that their loved one is suffering. Until maybe they see it a few times. And they're trying to figure out, how can this happen, and let's not let it happen. You need to make them well. And they're so angry and they're so upset. It's hard for families, harder for the families than the patients who are vented and don't remember any of this, I think. So
and
that's what we kind of day in and day out.
It has to be incredibly emotionally draining. And I know to do the work that you do have to have some distance, but this is so different. And the numbers, the scale must be different.
It is. We're seeing a lot more. We normally, we're seeing 20 to 30 a day, just for one provider, and more as the numbers come in.
Yeah. Thank you, Becky. Clarissa, how has this impacted your work?
Like everybody mentioned, it's very fatiguing for us. As a therapist, we go into each room with all of the PPE that Vicki described, and we physically have to be very close to a patient, lifting them. They're very deconditioned. Usually we could, the rest of the staff isn't as overwhelmed, and so they have more time to get our patients up and move them if we're not there. Right now, unfortunately, because of the enormous amount of patients, we have people who are kind of deconditioned more than normal. It takes a lot more energy for them to do anything. Physically, it's exhausting to us, and it's very hot with all of that equipment on as we lift patients left and right. And emotionally, it's hard for them too, because like they have mentioned, there's no family around or any support for them. So we try to motivate them as best as we can and do what we can with them, but it's very trying.
And Clarissa, have you been rehabbing COVID patients who've gotten better? Is that part of your work?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
And so I would imagine that there's some, once in a while, some good news, but what are some of the effects of COVID that we're not hearing enough about, the after effects of it?
A lot of it is patients are just on an incredible amount of oxygen. So just the smallest task of putting on a shirt or taking a couple steps to a commode is so difficult for them. It's very fatiguing. I don't think people understand how much energy is taken out of each of these patients. And normally, like I said, we would typically get a patient up multiple times a day, but our staff, is spread thin over a lot of things right now. We have a lot going on. And part of our staff has gone to what's called a proning team, where they're over there rotating patients for the good of their bodies for oxygenation. So we kind of are relying on each other, and we're trying to stay positive as much as we can, but it is overwhelming.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much. Mark, I want to go over to you. What is it you want people to hear from your perspective about life on the front lines?
Well, first I want to thank all of our phlebotomists who are the front lines for the lab, who go out to the patients' rooms and have to don additional PPE and deal with the same issues that we've been discussing. And then also just to be patient, we've had a Herculean task of going from a model where we rely on the CDC and the state health lab to do this kind of testing to being able to do it ourselves. And we've bought millions of dollars worth of equipment and basically moved into a new lab space to create more room to do all the testing. And we're working on getting point of care testing so we can have more rapid turnaround time. But it just seems like no matter how fast we move, and we're moving 10 times faster than normal, it's still not enough to keep up. And I think we've projected that by the end of August or September, we should be able to meet demand. But just to let you know that, folks that normally work 8 hours a day are working around the clock, and people that weren't involved in, accessioning or processing specimens are now doing that work. So we've done everything we can to focus on it, but it's causing a lot of burnout with the techs and with the phlebotomists, but they're all amazingly resilient. So I appreciate everybody's understanding.
Thank you. Now, Jason, Laura, you guys have a little different perspective. Jason, I know early on, I remember your dad, who happens to be related to me by birth, as in my brother. You had to respond to a call where this person had COVID. And so, almost instantly early on, you guys are face to face with it yourself in the work that you do. So what are some of the things that you're seeing in your work, Jason? And what do you want people to hear from your perspective about this?
So I'd say for the fire department in general, our day-to-day hasn't really changed a whole lot. We still, we signed up for this job. We knew there would be risks, not specifically this risk. But it's just kind of one of those things that it came along. We have to figure out how to deal with it.
Yep.
The downside, and the nurses in the hospitals are dealing with it as well, but the downside of what we're doing is we're going into people's homes. And a lot of times we don't know that they're COVID positive until after the fact, 5 to 7 days later. So we have to treat everybody as if they are COVID positive. So for us, our PPE, it's really, we have N95s, we have eye protection, and we have gloves, and that's kind of it. We don't really have gowns. At one point they sent us ponchos to wear. It is what it is.
Yep.
So,
I think everything has changed so much. So we've been through this whole, and really in the hospital as well, this roller coaster of, in the beginning, we were looking at Italy and looking at what was happening there, and really scared of what was going to happen, thinking it was happening in March. So in March, my nervous system was ready for that to happen then. And then we went through a lull when we stopped elective procedures, and then it blew up. And through that time, we, as a family, gone through, do we keep our kids at home and not let them see anybody? Do we keep them away from us completely and not let them see us? Until we realized this is not a 1 week, 2 week, 1 month, 2 month thing, that this is going on for a very long time. And adjusting to all of that has been, it is just our normal now, but it has been quite the ride getting there.
When we were trying to decide whether or not to shut down our worship services, this was like the 13th, 14th, 15th, something like that in March. And we were talking about it. We thought, well, we can put all these things in place and we can keep people safe. And, we still had this nagging sense, we better close. And Jeff called me up and he said, my daughter-in-law, Laura, said, why in the world would you stay open? And of course, when Laura speaks, we jump and we do what we're told to do because she knows what she's talking about. And that's back in the day when we had 20, 30 cases a day, right? Now we're running thousands a day. And it did kind of surprise us all. We thought we had it under control, then bam. But Laura, you work as a nurse. So what are some of the things that you've been experiencing from that perspective?
So I'm in a little bit of a unique situation because my unit, I'm a charge nurse, and we are not the designated COVID unit. That's a different area of our hospital. So all of my staff goes there, but I have to stay in my unit. So I am not as exposed to it as other people have been, even though I go there and I see my coworkers that are they're exhausted. And so because we've taken over 2 of our ICUs that typically treat other patients to be designated COVID, all of those patients that are of other specialties are now in ICUs that they wouldn't usually be in. Plus we took beds, areas that weren't in ICU, and created them to be in ICU. So now we have this other area where ICU patients are clean, like away from the COVID. There are 16 additional beds that we don't have staff for. We still have the same number of staff that we always had. So people are working many, many, many days a week to try and cover for that. And so that exhaustion is so much. It's just unpredictable. You never know which patient is going to come up positive and which one is not. And I know that surgeon who spoke earlier, it's like these trauma patients come in and you think that there wouldn't be any reason why they would be positive because initially you're looking for respiratory issues. Well, that's not what everyone presents with. And so then you get these surprises where you had them in the clean area of the hospital, and then they get tested to be able to go out to a rehab facility or something later and find out that they were positive. And so you do have a lot of these exposures that are unintentional, even with the best of systems that happens. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Now, Liz, your work's a little bit different. We lovingly call you the butt doctor because you do colonoscopies. How has this impacted the work that you're doing?
So a lot of changes. I continued doing procedures, all through the quarantine, mainly 1 day a week with the more urgent cases. As far as at the practice level, we transitioned over to telemedicine. So we kept the practice open and continued to do telemedicine with our patients and kept busy. I mean, we were still getting referrals coming in. We continued to do that. At the surgical center, once we were able to start doing elective procedures again, at the surgical center, like each one has their own specific protocol for testing patients. So they all have to get tested before they have a procedure. And each center has their own set up. One of them has like a little drive-through area where patients come in like 5 days before they get tested. And it's been interesting, like the spectrum of emotions with all of this. I mean, we've had patients, patients that are positive that we call them and tell them, listen, we've got to cancel your positive, who are angry. How could I be positive? I feel great. And how dare you cancel my procedure? Like just very, very, odd reaction. Like you think like, okay, wow, they'd be like, oh, wow, thanks for letting me know. And what do I need to do? And, but instead like just angry at us. And I realize it's a crazy time. I mean, on any given day now in our practice, we're still doing a lot of telemedicine, but now we're seeing patients in the office. There are people that still want to come in. So we're seeing them like 1 to 2 days a week. And on any given day, we'll have for procedures, I'm back to scoping every single day. We'll have anywhere from 7 to 10 cancellations. People that are scared, people that have a family member that are positive and they need to cancel. And of course, people that are coming back positive. So, with our office, I mean, we're trying we meet, Tina has a staff meeting every week with the staff. And we're just, if anything, trying to just encourage them, look, you may be the only glimmer of light for this patient, kindness, even though you may get screamed at or people are angry, patients are angry or whatever their emotion is, just trying as much as possible to realize that and just, extend kindness to them as much as we can, knowing what we're all going through.
Yeah. Thanks.
And
So Alan, I'm going to have you sort of speak because you and I talk quite a bit, and you're a guy who can articulate pretty well the emotional trauma, the emotional toll, how taxing it is for these great people who are working here, who are professionals and they're doing their jobs, but they're also human beings. And these are extraordinary times. So what have you been seeing? I know you've had somebody close to you where you work who just lost her life to COVID. So what's your perspective coming at it from a pastoral care mindset? What are you seeing?
First of all, irrespective of your theological persuasions or what faith you believe in or not, I go around the hospital every day, and when I see somebody do what they're called to do, I see God at work.
Yep.
And first and foremost, I see God in the darkness, but sometimes it's very hard to cling to that when the people you respect and the people you care for are just emotionally worn out. They're just exhausted. And the lack of, I feel like not only do I have a lack of tools on how to engage with people that have got that emotionally overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. I think the healthcare system in general doesn't know what to do with all these workers that are emotionally overwhelmed. It's like, well, we'll give you a free lunch. Well, nurses and physiotherapists and occupational therapists and EVS and the whole gamut of what it takes to run this healthcare system needs more than a free lunch. And it's not just about pay, how much you earn an hour or how much you get for what you do, because there's situations and circumstances that I've seen everybody in that you couldn't pay them enough to do what they do. I've seen Vicky in the trauma bay doing what she needs to do on children just to try and bring them back and be there with the family. There's no amount of money that can compensate you for that. I see the nurses doing what they do day in and day out to try and bring comfort and healing to patients. And there's no amount of money that could compensate them for their time and being in that situation with Becky. And even myself in the palliative care team, when we see patients and then we just huddle and all of a sudden we start crying because it's just overwhelming. Mm-hmm. I heard a nurse, an RN in the ICU say the other day with tears coming down her face, is like, one person dies and the next person comes in to die. Mm-hmm. And that's just the sense of hopelessness. So it's my hope, and I don't enjoy going to work at the moment. I don't like seeing my friends carrying this way, and I don't like feeling the atmosphere in the hospital. But in some ways, I feel that we're privileged to be there. And we're privileged to support each other through this. And I just don't have the answers. And I don't know what else to say. I just love you guys and thank you for everything you're doing. And if I was sick, and if I trust every single one of you to be there for me. So thank you for being there for the community that I believe God has established. So thank you all.
Thanks, Alan. You know, I was going to have these guys talk a little bit about some things they hope for all of us to think about when it comes to this. And I think what I want to do is just speak on their behalf for a moment. These people, as you've heard, they're giving their lives, they're giving their emotional lives, they're having to make decisions about, do I hang out with my kids or not? They're making huge decisions, and every day they are wrestling with this COVID illness. And right now, it's got to be not only frustrating because it's day after day, there's just not real end in sight at this point. And but we can make a difference. We can bring the numbers down. And so as your pastor, I want to encourage you, first of all, right now, just give them all a round of applause as you're watching, because they all deserve it. But they need more than that. They need your love and your grace. And you can do that by wearing that mask. Wherever you go, just wear the mask. It's not going to kill you. You look fabulous. And even if you think it's a hoax, just suck it up and wear the mask. It's not going to kill you, and it may very well save the lives of people. Some of these people you're watching on screen right now. Social distance, wash your hands, do all the things that science is telling us to do. We don't want you to be under their care. They don't want to see you. They love you, they just don't want to see you. So let's do for them, let's serve them as they're serving us. And let's do the things that we know we can do to make sure that we can bring these numbers back down again. And, you know, they went up so fast and they're going to go down slow. But again, we can make a difference. So I'm counting on you. I'm begging you. Wear the mask and pray for these folks and support them as you think about them. Whenever you drive by a hospital or a medical center, just pray for the folks who are working there. My daughter is going in for a little shot. She has migraines, so she's going in tomorrow to Mayo. And she had to get the brain test, you know, where they stick the swab up your nose and take a little brain sample. And she was talking about the people who do that. They're outside in their PPE stuff, you know, sticking swabs up people's noses, you know, up to the top of their head. And so, I mean, all of these people who are working so hard, we want to make sure that we lessen their load, and we can do that. I want to thank each and every one of you, and on behalf of our particular congregation, tell you that we do love you, and we support you, and we are so glad that we have a connection to those of you who are at the hospital with Alan, and of course, Jason, Laura, and Liz at the church. And so thank you very, very much. I appreciate all of you. And God's peace to you, and we hope that you will stay safe, and in a month or two, maybe you can take a breath. God's best to you all. Thank you so much.